This is BBC One in Yorkshire and the North Midlands. Now the news at 10 o'clock with Fiona Bruce and Charlotte Leeming.
Just a day after the hunting ban is made law, a challenge is mounted at the High Court. Hunt supporters claim Parliament acted illegally. They're threatening a campaign of civil disobedience. We'll be assessing how far the hunting community will go to challenge the new law and what will be done to stop them. Also tonight, the cheap antibiotic that could halve the number of children dying from AIDS. A vision of the future. London unveils full details of its 2012 Olympic bid. And Prince William, in his first in-depth interview, talks of a possible career in the army.
If I was to join the army, I'd want to go where my men went, and I'd want to do what they did. I would not want to be, kept back for sort of being precious or whatever. That's the last thing I want.
And here on the late Look North, the jury hears a harrowing tape recording of a Leeds police officer pleading for his life. And emergency at Jimmy's, how Europe's biggest hospital coped with an overnight power cut.
Good evening. Hunt supporters have wasted no time in challenging the hunting ban passed last night at Westminster. They claim that the Parliament Act, used by MPs to overrule the laws and force through the ban in England and Wales, is unlawful. Today they lodged a legal challenge at the High Court. On top of that, they're threatening a campaign of civil disobedience against the ban, which begins in February. Our Rural Affairs correspondent Tom Heap reports on the scale of the opposition ahead.
Soundly beaten by one pillar of the establishment, they're off to try their luck with another. The hunting campaign is now appealing to the judges to overturn the decision of the lawmakers.
We are now out of the snake pit of the House of Commons and into the altogether more intelligent and more serious and, I'm afraid, reflective conditions of the court, where evidence is listened to and isn't ignored as it was in Parliament yesterday.
There'll be no verdict in this case till well after the ban comes into force in mid-February. But the country's hunts aren't planning to twiddle their thumbs and wait for a result. These are the young hounds, barely a year old, and they haven't yet been out on any hunts. But they are the pack of the future, and whether it's legal or not, the kennels here is determined they will get out and hunt foxes next year. In this farmyard near Gatwick, it's time to put the menagerie of animals to bed. Graham Worsley and his wife are joint masters of the Old Surrey, Burstow and West Kent hounds. Their children are getting in on the act too. He has signed a declaration saying he'll hunt after the ban.
My understanding of the penalties are, I think, is it up to £5,000 fine and 6 months in prison. That is assuming that the magistrates will do that to me.
Do you really mean that? I mean, talk is cheap, but prison terms, fines, that's a different matter.
Yeah, I've made the commitment in the past. Yes, I will think very seriously about fulfilling it.
The prospect of unrest and arrests in the countryside seems to unnerve the Prime Minister, showing unease over the merits of the new law and discomfort over its effect.
The views on both sides are very, very entrenched in this argument. Well, it'll now go to the courts, and I've no doubt it'll be an issue. It always was going to be an issue. But what is important is that, so far as I'm concerned, we try and make sure that people handle the issue reasonably and sensibly.
His minister was a little more bullish.
Now is the time for everybody to calm down a little bit, recognise that legislation is now decided, and for law-abiding people to obey the law.
So can it be enforced? Here in Scotland, it's illegal to hunt with hounds. They're allowed to chase a fox, but not to kill it. It has to be shot. So this is lawful. The force in England admit gaining evidence will be a challenge.
They may wear red coats, they may still have hounds, and they'll be out doing the things that people have normally seen associated with hunting, but they won't actually be hunting wild mammals. But I guess we'll get a lot of calls from people saying there's people hunting.
So the hunters will be arrested if they're caught clearly breaking the law, unless the judiciary ride to their rescue in the coming months. Tom Heap, BBC News.
Well, how strong a case has the Countryside Alliance got against the use of the Parliament Act? And if the ban remains, do they have any chance of compensation? Margaret Gilmore has this assessment.
Legal opinion is divided, but challenging the hunting ban successfully in the courts will be very difficult. The Countryside Alliance is challenging the way it was forced through using the Parliament Act, which allows the Commons to overrule the Lords. They argue the Act is flawed because it was amended in 1949 without the consent of the Lords. What's more, they have powerful support.
Yes, I'm sure it has a chance of success. I can't say that it's bound to succeed. I have looked into it very carefully, and as far as I'm concerned, I think that their challenge is correct. Order.
Yesterday was only the fourth time in 55 years that the Commons has used the Parliament Act to introduce measures against the wishes of the Lords, and it's never before been successfully challenged.
It's unlikely to succeed for the simple reason that the courts not only don't like, but are actually banned from intervening in the proceedings of the House of Commons or of Parliament.
But the hunting lobby have another card up their sleeve. They're planning to mount a second legal challenge under the Human Rights Act, which gives people the right to protection of their property, and in this case they argue the right to their livelihoods. Lawyers for the hunt say a ban will force them to break employment contracts. In other words, people who work for the hunt, those who shoe horses or provide food, for example, could be without work in 3 months' time. If the courts agree, they'll declare the hunting ban incompatible with the Human Rights Act, and the government will be left with two options.
Either the government will have to pay compensation, which could be pretty heavy, or alternatively they'll have to delay the coming into force of the Act so that hunting businesses and employees involved in hunting have the time to make alternative arrangements.
The Countryside Alliance has put aside £2 million to pay for the legal action, but their chances of success in the courts are by no means guaranteed. And one thing is for sure, the ban on hunting will be in force long before these legal challenges are resolved. Fiona.
Margaret Gilmore there. A cheap antibiotic could dramatically improve the chances of children suffering from AIDS-related illnesses. That's according to British scientists who tested the drug in Africa. They found it reduced by almost half the number of patients dying from respiratory infections. The United Nations estimates AIDS kills 1,300 children every day. Our medical correspondent Fergus Walsh has the details.
Aaron and Mavis are two of Zambia's AIDS orphans. Their mother may have passed on the infection either in pregnancy or through breast milk. AIDS has left millions of children not just without parents, but with the disease itself. Worldwide last year, more than 600,000 children were infected with HIV/AIDS. Just under 500,000 died of AIDS-related illness. That means 1,300 children die every day. A drug trial in Africa funded by the British government found that a daily dose of a cheap antibiotic cut deaths by 43%. At last, some hope for children with HIV.
They've been left out, rather, while treatments and antiretrovirals are being talked about being rolled out across Africa. Of course, they have to be given to adults. They're the ones that look after the children, but the children have got a bit forgotten.
The drug, Cotrimoxazole, costs just 20 pence a day. Doctors found by giving it to children when they were well, it meant they were less likely to get sick. The findings of this research come as no surprise to AIDS experts in Britain. Here, Cotrimoxazole has been widely used since the late 80s for adults and children with HIV. It's proved highly effective in preventing opportunistic infections like pneumonia, which often target patients with impaired immune systems. In the developed world, massive funds are being poured into looking for a vaccine against HIV/AIDS. But in Africa, just one cheap existing drug could have a dramatic impact.
What we've forgotten in all of this is that there are simple and cost-effective treatments which need to be transferred more quickly and more effectively to poor countries where their impact would actually be as large as that of a new vaccine.
Drugs can slow death rates in Africa, not stop them. Even with better treatment, AIDS will continue to devastate one generation after another. Fergus Walsh, BBC News.
Government and rebel forces in Sudan have agreed to try to find a solution to the civil war, which has lasted over 20 years and claimed the lives of more than 2 million people in the south. The United Nations Security Council, meeting in Kenya, responded with a resolution urging the two sides to finalise a peace deal by the end of the year. but aid agencies say it will do little to improve the humanitarian situation in Darfur in Western Sudan. Prince William has spoken at length for the first time about his life, his family and his hopes for the future. The Prince, who's in his final year at university, said he was considering going on to Sandhurst to train as an army officer. And he stressed that he wanted to stay in control of his life, supporting the causes that he feels strongly about. Our royal correspondent Peter Hunt reports.
The pressure's on for William the student prince. There are final exams around the corner and a dissertation's looming.
And how's the writing up going? Yeah, the writing up's not going quite so well as it should be. I've got this much notes, but I've only written about 2,000 words.
St Andrews has been William's refuge for more than 3 years. He's been able to protect his privacy because by and large the media's left him alone. In return, these rare glimpses are provided. He says he's led a near normal, mundane life, performing everyday chores such as shopping.
It's so good because everyone sees me around the whole time, and it's no big deal, which is what I really want it to be. You know, the last thing I want to do is cause loads of, you know, hype or problems. I just want to go in there and get my asparagus or whatever. So it's really worked well.
He's clearly happy here, cocooned on the northeast coast of Scotland. He knows there are countless challenges ahead, the potential of a less compliant media, increasing royal duties and a destiny to fulfil. He wants to remain in the driving seat throughout.
I really do want to be in control of my own life, and you know, if I don't agree with what someone's saying or someone's pushing on me, then I won't do it. If I'm wrong and they're right and people tell me that, then obviously I'll change my mind. You know, I'm always open for people saying, you know, I'm wrong, because most of the time I am. But you know, I hate losing control. I think it's very important to you know, see what you want to do and go for it.
Are you worried about when you leave, about the new pressures you'll face?
I mean, again, you know, I am worried about it, obviously, but I don't really think about it too much because there's no point worrying about things that you know, are not really sort of present yet. I like to take every day as it comes and just go and have a good time and get on with it. There are obviously, you know, areas that I'm, you know, being pushed into doing, but I can be quite stubborn when I want to. And it's not that I never want to do it, it's just that I'm reluctant at such a young age, I think, anyway, to sort of throw myself into the deep end.
You've made it clear in the past, haven't you, that you aren't a reluctant future king?
No, I don't think I am. I mean, I have reservations about everything, and you know, the fortunate thing, obviously, is I have had such a normal childhood and in certain extents, obviously, and it'd be very hard to see that slip away.
Like his brother Harry, he may well try for Sandhurst and the army. If he does, William wants to lead from the front.
The last thing I want to do is mollycoddled or wrapped up in cotton wool, because if I was to join the army, I'd want to go where my men went, and I'd want to do what they did. I would not want to be, you know, kept back for sort of being precious or whatever. That's the last thing I want.
William says he gets on well with Harry, and together with their father, they're a very close family. He's protective of Prince Charles and bothered by the attacks he's faced.
He's had a difficult time, and you know, it's just sad. I said this last time, I'm sure I'll use the same words, but I just wish, you know, more of his charitable work was concentrated on, because he does do a hell of a lot of work, and the Prince's Trust is just an amazing, you know, organisation.
It's not all work and no play as a student. William's clearly thrived here. He was asked if he'd had any odd approaches as he'd wandered around St Andrews.
I've had the odd one or two. If you're implying that I've been proposed to on the street, then yes, I have. And I've been sort of people come up to me, Jehovah's Witnesses. I've had very devout Christians come out and saying that I should listen more to the Word of God. I've had lots of kids come up and ask for my autograph. I've had grandmothers stop me and ask me if they know any good places to buy underwear.
Do you?
No, actually, I don't. I was a bit stuck by that one, and actually that was the first one. I didn't mind being proposed to, but that one really caught me out. I was a little bit stumped what to say on that one.
William knows as the years go by, he'll have to reconcile his heartfelt desire to do normal things with the increasing demands of being a royal and one day a king. Peter Hunt, BBC News.
And digital viewers can see more of that interview with Prince William on our new interactive service, 10 o'clock News Extra. And the interview will be shown in full in a BBC News special tomorrow morning at 11:30 on BBC Two. Still to come on tonight's programme, a court hears the harrowing last moments before a police officer was shot. And why are these people preparing to spend the night on a pavement in London? The full details of London's 2012 Olympics bid have been made public for the first time today. The bid team's proposal, currently being considered by the International Olympic Committee, promises to deliver an accessible and affordable games. The outcome will be known in July. Robert Nisbet assesses London's chances of winning.
Running through London's selling points, this is a new video promoting the city's bid.
What have you done today to make you feel proud?
A former East Ender is pressed into service, as is the double gold medalist Kelly Holmes and the footballer David Beckham. But the subtle introduction of the bid's main sponsors, from newspapers to airlines, is proof this is a venture which needs capital. At today's launch, the bid's chairman promised a healthy return, £100 million profits and a lasting legacy of venues, jobs and housing.
We now have the details, the finances, the planning, the expertise, the capacity and the capability to deliver them.
Many of the documents, 600 pages, are given over to plans for the Olympic Park to be built here in East London. This is where the main stadium, indoor arenas, aquatic centre and Olympic Village would be built. London's mayor insists the team won't repeat the mistakes made by previous host cities such as Sydney and Atlanta.
We're not going to have a legacy of white elephants, things that stand unused. The 4 sports halls that will be taken down after the games are over are prefabricated. They will be reassembled and used in other regions of Britain.
The file also spells out the bid's cultural element, which includes a 5-day Olympic carnival. It also attempts to allay fears that London's transport network wouldn't cope. And it puts a figure on the cost of the Games, £2.4 billion of public money for building and security, with the private sector covering running costs of £1.5 billion. And the bid team has set out the ticket prices. They would start at £15. Half would be under £30 and would include free transport in London. But Paris remains favourite. It's the city's third attempt. The main stadium, the Stade de France, is already built. London's team fears cynicism here could also help them.
Every bit of sort of gratuitous knocking copy is a vote for one of the other cities. And is that really what we want?
London 2012's next obstacle is an IOC visit in February. The decision that would transform this part of East London won't be made for another 8 months, when the 124 members of the International Olympic Committee meet in the distinctly sunnier climes of Singapore. Robert Nisbet, BBC News, Stratford, East London.
An investigation is underway into how a man accused of a string of firearms offences was released from jail by mistake. Bobby Phipps had been awaiting trial on 6 counts of attempted murder, but was accidentally freed from Manchester prison on Monday. Police say he's dangerous and shouldn't be approached. A harrowing recording of the last moments of a police officer who was shot dead have been played at Newcastle Crown Court. David Bieber is standing trial for the murder of PC Ian Broadhurst in Leeds on Boxing Day last year. He's also charged with the attempted murder of 2 other officers. Catherine Marston was in court.
PC Broadhurst's family arrived knowing the tape was to be played. His mother Cindy broke down as she heard her son on the recording. Eilish, his wife, chose not to stay in court to listen. The tape records the sound of the final moments of Ian Broadhurst's life as he lies seriously injured after being shot. He's heard pleading with the gunman, but then is shot a second time in the head. The officer and his colleague, PC Neil Roper, had just arrested a man for driving a stolen BMW. The suspect becomes agitated and tries to step out of the car. PC Roper says, "'Cause we're transporting you, we're having to put handcuffs on you, all right?" The man says, "No, I got..." Roper says, "Claustrophobic." "Yeah," he answers. PC Roper says, "Well, I'm sorry, you can't sit behind us." And then there's the sound of handcuffs. As the officers try to handcuff him, the suspect says, "Listen, don't." PC Roper then shouts, "He's got a gun." a gunshot's fired, and then there's the sound of screaming. 3 more shots are heard, and there's more screaming. And then PC Broadhurst screams out, "No, don't, please, please, no." The last sound is the 5th and final gunshot. David Bieber, whose picture can't be shown, was in court to hear the recording. He denies 5 charges, including murder. PC Broadhurst actually says very little during the 19-minute tape from the police car. At times he's heard singing and whistling. The judge had warned the jury what happens on the tape is shocking and dramatic. Catherine Marston, BBC News, Newcastle Crown Court.
After a presidential campaign mired by claims of corruption and intimidation, the Ukraine will vote in an election on Sunday that's being seen as a contest between East and West. The 2 competing candidates have contrasting visions for the former Soviet republic. The current Prime Minister wants the Ukraine to stay politically aligned to Russia. But his Liberal opponent is pushing for closer integration with the European Union and NATO. From Kiev, Damien Grammaticus reports.
On the eastern edge of the European Union, they're preparing for a moment of decision. This Sunday, Ukrainians choose a new president. This is an election that could have consequences for years to come. Ukraine, a nation of 50 million, born from the collapse of the Soviet Union, faces a stark choice. Viktor Yanukovych, the current prime minister, wants Ukraine to move closer to Russia. His rival, Viktor Yushchenko, sees Ukraine as integrated into the EU and NATO. It's proving a tough, sometimes dirty fight. Mr. Yushchenko even says the authorities have tried to poison him. He's been left ill, his face disfigured, but he's pursuing his vision of Ukraine, looking to the West. For a nation located in the heart of Europe, it's a better choice to be democratic, free and prosperous. It's a much more pleasant prospect than my opponents. But Russia is keen to regain the influence it had here. President Putin shared a platform with Viktor Yanukovych just 3 weeks ago, commemorating the defeat of Nazi Germany. Mr. Putin's message, he'd welcome closer partnership. We will follow what is in our economic interest. In future, that means our political ties with Russia will also grow, and it makes a new division in Europe more likely. With so much at stake, many are already crying foul. Just outside Kiev, opposition workers showed me a whole street of houses missing from voter lists. In the first round of the elections last month, up to 1 million Ukrainians were unable to vote. And in his office, Mykola Pashinsky showed me election returns from the first round. They were not written in indelible ink, he said, and could easily be altered. Western monitors are trying to ensure a free vote. They've already complained about open bias in the media. For much of the campaign, government-controlled TV has either ignored or attacked the opposition. One ad paints them as fascists who bring turmoil to Ukraine.
Tonight here in Kiev, campaigning is now over. The result of this election could define the future map of Europe, whether the EU continues to expand or whether there's a new bloc of states that's under increasing Russian influence. Damien Grammaticus, BBC News, Kiev.
Scores of people are preparing to sleep on the pavement in London tonight, hoping to be the first inside the new flagship store of Apple computers. But it's not the computers most of them want to get their hands on. The fortunes of the company behind the Apple Mac have been transformed, thanks mainly to the iPod, a pocket-sized digital music player, as Rory Kethlin-Jones now reports.
Meet the Apple fanatics. On a cold night, dozens are camping out on London's Regent Street, waiting for the computer firm's first European store to open tomorrow.
It's a bit sad, but it's just as sad as queuing up for, you know, your favourite band or something. Apple people are very loyal and they're very enthusiastic about their company.
Here's what happened when the Tokyo store opened. But until recently, Apple's problem was that its fans were keen but thin on the ground. It's this which transformed the company. The iPod music player has been a huge seller around the world, sending Apple's profits and share price soaring. There's a hefty price tag on the device which stores up to 10,000 songs, but technology isn't the prime reason for its success.
Apple is the first IT company to really understand that technology products are not about technology, they're much more about style and design, and they have pushed that right the way through, and that's why the iPod is right out in front. It really is the design icon of the age.
Just a few years back, Apple seemed to be in terminal decline. Now, almost on its own, the iPod has changed all that. It now has 59% of the world market in personal music players. But when it comes to the basic business of selling personal computers, things don't look so good. There, Apple now has less than 3% of the world market. From the start, Apple won praise for innovative computers, only to see its market devoured by rivals running Windows software. Now, music's at the heart of its strategy. A tie-up with U2, with the band promoting iPods and Apple selling its music online, is evidence of its ambitions. But the competition isn't just looking on. Rivals are bringing out cheaper products, determined that Apple won't dominate this lucrative market. No doubt these iPods will be snapped up tomorrow, but history shows that fashionable products can have a limited shelf life. Rory Catlin-Jones, BBC News.
And that's all from the 10 o'clock news. Newsnight will be getting underway shortly over on BBC Two, but now it's time to join our news teams across the UK. Bye-bye.
Good evening from Look North. The mother of murdered Leeds policeman Ian Broadhurst has broken down in tears after she heard a tape of the last moments before her 34-year-old son was shot dead. It was a harrowing day for Ian Broadhurst's family on the fourth day of the trial of American David Bieber, who denies the killing. The jury heard the 8-minute conversation between a suspect and two policemen who had arrested him before the shooting. Well, our crime correspondent John Cundy was at Newcastle Crown Court. Earlier, he told me what happened today.
Well, it was a traumatic day for the family. The night before, Mr. Justice Moses, the trial judge, had warned the experience was going to be profoundly distressing for everybody. Alicia Broadhurst, the widow of Ian Broadhurst, arrived this morning knowing that if she stayed in court, she would hear the dying moments of her husband. In the event, she and Ian Broadhurst's father, Barry, left court number 1 before the tape was played, but Ian Broadhurst's mother, Cindy Eaton, stayed in, and when it got to hearing the moments of her son being murdered, she broke down into tears, and a lady in the public gallery behind her threw her arms round her to comfort her. But we heard how 8 minutes of banal chatter between the man the prosecution say was David Bieber, the arrested man, and the two police constables recorded in the police car suddenly changed in a moment. And I read from the transcript as Neil Roper leant forward, PC Roper, to put the handcuffs on the man alleged to be David Bieber. He says he's got a gun. We heard one gunshot fired. There was screaming, loud screaming, 3 more shots fired. Then the sound of Ian Broadhurst wounded on the ground, pleading, "No, don't, please, please, no." And then a 5th shot, the one the prosecution say alleged was David Bieber, shooting PC Ian Broadhurst through the head.
Now, last night we brought you news of a major power failure at St James's Hospital in Leeds. Well, we're pleased to say the lights are back on this evening following the 19-hour power cut. The hospital had to rely on emergency generators after building work severed gas and electricity cables. All accident and emergency cases were diverted to the Leeds General Infirmary, as Penny Buston now reports.
It was a tale of 2 hospitals this morning, crowded corridors in A&E at the infirmary as it coped with patients and staff diverted there from St James's.
Very, very busy in there, but I think people are being seen quite quickly given the circumstances. I think they're coping very well.
There's a lot of patients in corridors waiting.
The doctors and nurses and that are just running around like mad people, getting everything sorted.
Meanwhile, across town, neat trolleys in St James's A&E and an eerie silence. Reduced power everywhere as generators kept essential services running. One patient had to be transferred last night before a critical transplant operation, and all outpatient clinics and non-emergency surgery were cancelled.
It's unlikely today to have affected more than 50 patients, we think, for elective surgical procedures on this site. There'll be rather more than that will have had some disruption to their outpatient clinics. But again, we will be making arrangements to bring all those patients back in again as soon as possible.
This is the heart of the problem. Excavation work for the hospital's new 10-storey cancer wing. At around 4:40 last night, a landslip severed gas and electricity cables, cutting power to the whole site. The contractors and health and safety executive are investigating the cause.
The building works had finished for the night because it got dark. There was no digging going on, no excavation going on. What appears to have happened is that the air slip is just pushed away into the excavation, but for the moment we don't know what the cause was. It is an old site, and it's had many buildings on the site, and there's been obviously a lot of water recently, a lot of rain, and that can make it destabilises the ground as well.
Management have paid tribute to health staff for their flexibility and dedication throughout a difficult day.
The head teacher of Easingwold School has paid tribute to a 16-year-old pupil who hanged himself. Oliver Lee from Skelton near York was found on Wednesday afternoon in his bedroom and was pronounced dead in hospital. It's a substance which kills 5 youngsters every month, and for 1 in 4 of those it'll be the first time they've ever used it. Now a solvent abuse conference has been set up in Bradford in memory of Chantal Bleur. The 16-year-old died after sniffing butane gas from a cigarette light refilled canister. Today former addicts joined Chantal's family to warn young people of the dangers.
I'd begin taking the gas, and I wouldn't stop really until, you know, all of a sudden I couldn't find any more gas. I'd run through all the rest of my cans. And then normally by that time it'd take me right through the day and into the evening to do that, and I'd just sit there and usually just shiver on my couch really, because my body was full of butane and it kind of like freezes you.
So we're just trying to tell children that although it's not classed as a drug, it is actually more lethal than a drug, and the deaths are far higher than heroin and ecstasy put together. And obviously constant use could cause brain damage, and also you could go on to use other substances.
Now, sport and rugby union, there was drama at Headingley tonight as Leeds Tykes were beaten by Bath in the Zurich Premiership. The Tykes were leading with just seconds of the game remaining before Bath's Ollie Barkley scored an injury time try, so it finished Leeds 28, Bath 30. Now, it's been an incredible day's fundraising for children in need. You've all played your part, helping Pudsy's Total on the way to great heights. In a moment, we'll have the latest regional figures for you. But first, here's Tom Ingle with a look back at how you've done it.
It's Children in Need 2004, so let the frantic fundraising begin. We're in Barnsley, not with a bicycle made for 2. Oh no, we've got a bicycle made for 23! The good people from Heaven and Hell Club are bashing this behemoth from Barnsley to Leeds and back. How far is it, Pete?
It's a long way. How far is it, Jim? 20 miles.
All the way to Leeds?
It's to Leeds, yes.
You're all absolutely mad, do you know that?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I thought they'd know that. At Oakwood School in Rotherham, it's the first gunge of the day. Ever fancied bobbing for apples in custard and beans? No, didn't think so. Can you describe that for me?
Minging.
Is that a technical term?
Yeah. We've done car washing, there's beauty nail treatments going on, apple bobbing, selling cakes, sponsored walks, sponsored bike rides.
The whole lot, really?
Collecting money, that's right.
How much have you raised?
Over 4,500 so far.
You see, some things don't change. School dinners are still as popular as ever. In Beverley, they like to feel the burn. Here at Minster Health and Fitness, more than 50 people have been engaged in a 24-hour exercise bike ride. After the first few million calories, who's counting? Let's face it, it's the money that matters. Do the ears actually help?
No, not really.
They don't make you more aerodynamic for the exercise bike?
I've been sat on this bike for 2 hours.
So let me guess, it's not your ears that are feeling numb then?
No, I won't go into that.
It is, of course, the law that someone has to sit in the bath of baked beans, and this year the randomly selected victim is Chris from the University of Hull. Chris, get in the bath. OK, everyone, add the gunk! Who's sorry now?
Yeah, that'll be me.
If all your fundraising wasn't enough excitement, one of the major Children in Need concerts came live from Hull, including 2 great acts, Lamar and McFly. Well, that's it for another remarkable year. All it remains for me to say is thank you so much for all your hard work raising money, because every penny goes to a truly wonderful cause. Thank you again, and see you, of course, in 2005.
Tom, thank you. Fantastic fundraising there. Now time to check on the weather with Lisa.
Thank you, Charlotte. Good evening. Well, with clear skies, temperatures are going to drop quickly as we go through the night. Ice could be a problem on treated roads and pavement, and also there will be a widespread frost. Temperatures dropping down as low as -3, maybe as low as -5 degrees over parts of the Dales. So a cold, frosty start to the day tomorrow, but plenty of sunshine right the way across the region. It will turn hazy from the west later in the afternoon as high cloud spills in, and another bitterly cold day. Top temperatures only 4 or 5 degrees Celsius.
Thank you, Lisa. So the total we've raised so far in our region is over £387,650. Brilliant stuff. Please do keep donating. We'll see you tomorrow tea time. Bye-bye.
Hello there. I think the weather at the moment is more suited to polar bears rather than pudsey bears. It's pretty cold out there. Let's have a look at some of the latest temperatures, and you can see quite a frost in quite a few places, and already it's down to -3 in Lincoln and in Dundee, and it's only going to get colder through the rest of the night. A widespread frost, blues just about everywhere, and we're looking at inland temperatures down to about -4 or -5 degrees. There could be a few icy patches around as well, particularly where we've still got some showers, and they're still there across northern Scotland. Most of these are of a wintry flavour, though not as many as we had earlier on. Few sneaky showers filtering through the North Channel in towards the coast of North Wales, and some wetter weather that's just gradually edging its way in from off the Atlantic. Now that's going to push its way into Northern Ireland and into Wales by the time we head in towards the morning tomorrow. Could well give us a covering of snow over some high-level routes in particular, but certainly some hazardous travelling conditions for a while. Don't think we're going to see too much snow across the southwest of England. Here it's mostly rain, I suspect, and that wintry weather across Northern Ireland should tend to fade away through the afternoon. But I think we'll keep this wintry mix of rain, sleet and snow across Wales, maybe heading into the West Midlands, across to Hampshire, eventually even into Sussex by the end of the day. So the best of the sunshine continuing further east and further north, all the way up and towards Scotland. But whether you get the sunshine or you get the cloud, it's a day for wrapping up well. It's going to be a raw day with temperatures about 4 or 5 degrees as we saw during today. Now tomorrow night could be quite interesting as well. Another cold one for northern and eastern areas. Could be quite icy as well, with that wetter weather continuing to nudge into this very cold air. And for a time we could well see a spell of sleet and snow for northeast England and across Scotland. Should eventually then turn to rain, some quite heavy rain for western Scotland. A lot of cloud around certainly on Sunday, but things are starting to change. The temperatures for many of us really beginning to pick up signs of milder air on the way. So for a while we've got a brief spell of really quite cold weather, but I think it's all changed by the end of this weekend.
I've never
much
really
milder
done
weather
anything
across
quite
the
like
whole
this
of
before.
the
Most of the
country by
editions
the
that I've held
beginning
have been
of
for
next
pop
week. It's all changing because we're changing the wind direction. We'll gradually pick up a westerly wind, slowly but surely, and that will shuffle that milder weather right the way across the whole of the country. So I think by the time we head into next week, the cold weather, a distant memory, much milder for all of us on Monday. Temperatures double figures, a little bit of rain towards the south, otherwise dry and bright. Most places should be fine on Tuesday. That's it. Have a good night.
Don't miss the newsreaders as Duran Duran and Bananarama in Children in Need next.